Top stories. St. Kitts Nevis Trades and Labor Union hosts 81st conference. Squatters in Guyana hospitalized. And White House defends Vice President Pence's campaigning. Hello and welcome to the ZIZ Midday Newscast. Today is October 20th, 2020. I am your presenter, Shaira Flanders. Nationally, members of the St. Kitts Nevis Trades and Labor Union gathered at the SWMC conference room on Sunday for the hosting of the union's 81st annual conference. Guided by the theme Inspiring Trade Union Growth in the New Normal, the conference featured a public and business session and featured fraternal greeting from associate organizations. Addressing the public session, President of the St. Kitts Nevis Trades and Labor Union, Sydney Bridgewater, outlined the role of the union.
That is our role, to listen to your voice and to be your voice. Our organization intends on engaging the public through specific promotional and educational activities in the near future, so as to expand its membership. I wish to highlight at this time that the union is waiting to further its contribution to the shaping of the nation's labor code document spearheaded by the competent authority.
Labor Commissioner Shernil James congratulated the union on the hosting of its 81st conference and spoke of the significance of the chosen theme.
I wish to extend congratulations to the union on the commencement of your 81st annual conference and to wish you a successful business session. The theme for this year's conference, Inspiring Trade Union Growth in the New Normal, is timely as the world grapples with the effect of the global pandemic, the SARS novel coronavirus, as we would say COVID-19, and the decline of many regional economies. Indeed, the shock of COVID-19 is like no other, involving stimulus disruptions to both supply and demand in our connected world economy.
The business session of the St. Kitts Nevis Trades and Labor Union's 81st annual conference also saw the election of an executive committee and a disbursement of the guide for the new term 2020-2021. And in other news, the St. Christopher Air and Seaports Authority, or SCASPA, is reminding the general public that access to the Robert L. Batcher International Airport will be limited as they prepare to reopen the country's borders to commercial and international flights on Saturday, October 31st. In a press release issued on Monday, SCASPA has implemented a number of protocols for the general public to follow in an effort to ensure the health and safety of both nationals and visitors alike. The protocols are as follows. Access to the Robert Llewellyn Batcher International Airport will be restricted to passengers, workers, tenants, and stakeholders conducting business. Casual drive-through by the general public will not be permitted. Drop-offs only. Authorized users of the airport are asked to comply strictly to the vehicular traffic rules for drive-through and designated parking. Only NEOC and tourism-approved taxi and tour operators will be allowed to operate out of the airport with restricted numbers. The branch of the National Bank and the restaurant located at RLBIA will not be serving the general public. Only airport users, and the wearing of masks is mandatory for all persons entering the compound unless valid documentation is presented from a medical practitioner or unless it's children under the age of 6. SCASPA thanked the general public for their cooperation and compliance. Prime Minister Dr. The Honorable Timothy Harris will be headlining the 26th edition of Leadership Matters, the government's virtual forum series, on Tuesday, October 27, 2020. Joining Prime Minister Harris on the panel to answer questions of the listening public will be Minister of Tourism, Transport and Ports, the Honorable Lindsay Grant, Chief Medical Officer Dr. Hazel Laws, who heads up the Health Emergency Operations Center, or HEOC, and Chief Immigration Officer, Ms. Mercelyn Hughes, who heads the COVID-19 Compliance and Enforcement Task Force commissioned by the National Emergency Operations Center, or NEOC. The focus of discussion will be the reopening of the Federation's border crossings this coming Saturday, October 31st. The call-in numbers for Leadership Matters are 1-869-466-2666, 662-8674, 767-4765, and 1-239-645-4500. Questions can also be sent via WhatsApp to 869-661-5683. We now move on to news on the regional scene in Guyana. Several East Coast Demerara squatters, including a pregnant woman, were rushed to the Georgetown Public Hospital after being pinned by a fallen tree at the squatting settlement on Friday. Here's more in this report.
A pregnant woman is said to be nursing serious injuries after she, along with 7 other persons, found themselves trapped under a fallen tree at around 1400 hours on Friday. When Nightly News visited the scene, the injured persons had already left for the hospital after being rescued by other squatters and police ranks guarding the area. However, there were visible bloodstains around the site of the fallen tree. According to reports, the squatters were sitting under a makeshift tent contemplating their next move because some of the structures they built remain in the flooded out area when they heard a cracking sound coming from the tree that stood on a dam behind the tent. Before they knew it, the tree fell, making it impossible for them to escape. One of the injured squatters, who was rescued along with her daughter, recounted what transpired.
Well, we were sitting under the shed gaffing as usual because we hear that some of the people were supposed to come in today. So everybody gang up under the shed waiting for see the people there. All we hear is this rattling, and by the time we look back, there comes the tree on us, pin everybody. Everybody get injured that went under the shed.
About how many persons?
About 10 or more of we. The majority then gone to the hospital. I just lucky that made me that to come out how we there.
The squatters related that one person was in an unconscious state after being rescued.
We try and get them for rush them to the hospital, but we think we got one critical person. She's pregnant and she was already frothing. The police came and they tell us, hustle, come and they look and they help us to take them out too. And carry them to the police vehicle. Is the first vehicle that leave with them.
One lady, she's critical. She got a back injury. Basically, she must die in the process of going to the hospital because it's really serious. It's a real big tree, as you could see. You understand? But several other persons get injured. A lady, she almost lose almost all her teeth.
They are adamant that the unfortunate incident could have been prevented if the area where their structures are built were not flooded out.
Next one around to the big tree and all them girls me buy. All them girls lie down in the tree, they're hollering for help body. You see? Me know what them people is really there on body. Them people is gonna come and do some kind. Then girl get a place for properly and then flood out down there. Then girl with the home. Then girl want to do out there, so they're fighting and cars. Everybody waiting for a proper answer from somebody.
The Guyana Police Force said no work was ongoing by Gaisuko in that area at the time of the incident. Up to news time, the identities of the injured squatters were not revealed. Tamika Rodney reporting for the HGP Nightly News.
On Friday, Antigua and Barbuda's Health Minister, the Honorable Molwyn Joseph, says police officers will soon join the Health Ministry's surveillance team to monitor people in quarantine. Here's more in this ABS News report.
Health Minister the Honorable Molwyn Joseph is renewing an appeal for members of the public to adhere to COVID-19 protocols to reduce the spread of the virus among the population. The Health Minister says the public responded admirably in the early months of the pandemic, but laments an increasing lack of discipline in recent times. He cautions stricter measures will have to be implemented.
I spoke with the Attorney General this morning, and he has agreed to assist the Ministry of Health with dedicated police officers whose assignment would only be to assist the Ministry of Health in keeping strict surveillance of people in quarantine.
He says this new measure comes in response to strong evidence that people are routinely leaving quarantine facilities without the permission of health authorities.
And I want to highlight specifically a case where a young lady was should have been in isolation. She was positive, but yet she left her home and went to work in a bar.
Minister Joseph says it's estimated that more than 100 patrons visited the establishment and reveals the matter has been turned over to the police force.
We want to see action taken against individuals who act in such a responsible way as to jeopardize the health of the wider society. There is no excuse for it. There is no need to dance around the issue. People who are irresponsible should pay.
He says the government is also considering an increase in the fines for people who disregard quarantine instructions. Jimmy J. O'Shea, ABS News. Health Minister.
On the international scene, U.S. Vice President Mike Pence has continued to campaign despite his Chief of Staff, Mark Short, testing positive for coronavirus on Saturday, as did at least 4 others in his circle. Al Jazeera's Andy Gallagher reports from Miami, Florida.
A new wave of coronavirus cases in the White House isn't stopping Vice President Mike Pence hitting the road. Pence's Chief of Staff and other members of his team tested positive for COVID-19, but officials say the 61-year-old is healthy and, because he's considered essential, campaigned in the key state of North Carolina.
With Joe Biden, you got 47 years of all talk, no action. But you're here tonight because you know what I know. Under President Donald Trump, it's been 47 months of all action, all results. 47 months of promises made and promises kept.
Everything is at stake in this election. And so I'm here to thank you.
The fact that Pence is potentially exposing others to the virus drew sharp criticism from the Democratic vice presidential nominee Kamala Harris. She suspended her campaign when members of her own team tested positive and says Pence, who heads the coronavirus task force, should follow guidelines.
Listen, he should be following the guidelines. We're doing it. I think we have modeled the right and good behavior, and they should take our lead.
President Trump spent the day in New Hampshire and Maine, which could both be crucial states on Election Day. He continues to tell supporters that the pandemic will soon be over, vaccines are on the way, and that a lockdown is the last thing the US economy needs. The president claims his rival Joe Biden wants to shut the economy down, destroying the lives and dreams of tens of millions.
Desperately hurt our small businesses, inflict lasting harm on our children, and massively reduce life expectancy for the American people, life expectancy. So, for the American people, you see what happens. And I came up with a statement. I don't know, I think it was me. They'll try and find somebody else said it 25 years ago. The cure cannot be worse than the problem itself.
Vice President Joe Biden, who's leading in national polls, spent the day with his family in Delaware. He'll attend a virtual Get Out the Vote event, even as a record number of people have already cast their ballots. While the messaging from both campaigns is not likely to change in these final days, what's becoming clear is this may be a fight for battleground states where polls suggest the candidates are in a tight race. Places like Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and here in Florida are all at play, and both campaigns are scrambling for every vote. Andy Gallagher, Al Jazeera, Miami, Florida.
The Spanish government has declared a new state of emergency and ordered a nationwide curfew in an effort to curb soaring coronavirus infections. On Sunday, Italy's prime minister announced new anti-coronavirus measures for bars, restaurants, and public gatherings in a last-ditch effort aimed at avoiding a new nationwide lockdown. Al Jazeera's Nadim Baba reports.
One of a string of protests in Italy against pandemic-related restrictions. Demonstrators converged on the government building in Rome to denounce a nighttime curfew. They say it's shattering the economy. But on Sunday, the Prime Minister announced tough new measures, saying COVID-19 cases were rising dangerously across the country and placing pressure on the health system.
Gestire la pandemia significa
Managing the pandemic means to permit our medical system to give a prompt response, guaranteeing treatment and proper hospitalisations to all citizens. It means to prevent a second complete lockdown like the one we had in spring. The country cannot afford it.
Bars and restaurants have to close at 6 p.m, although they can offer a takeaway service. Gyms, swimming pools, cinemas and theatres are being ordered to shut. and people are being strongly advised not to leave home except for work, health or education purposes. But so far there's no ban on travelling. Spain is going further, with a new state of emergency coming into effect on Sunday night. The country's desperately trying to avoid going through the trauma it suffered in the spring. The new law includes nighttime curfews everywhere except the Canary Islands. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez says the legislation will last for 15 days, but he'll ask Parliament to extend it for 6 months.
Da una cobertura jurídica, constitucional.
It gives legal constitutional coverage for the temporary restriction for 6 months of fundamental rights such as freedom of movement from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. It also gives regions the ability to stop people coming in or out of certain neighbourhoods, a city or a whole region.
The World Health Organization says Europe reported 222,000 new COVID-19 cases on Saturday, accounting for nearly half the global total. But addressing the World Health Summit happening in Berlin but also online, the head of the United Nations urged countries to think beyond their own borders.
We need global solidarity every step of the way. Developed countries must support health systems in countries that are short of resources. And we must join together as governments, the private sector, civil society and all partners to make sure vaccines, tests and treatments are available to everyone, everywhere. A vaccine must be a global public good.
On the edge of Europe, Russia's caseload remains the fourth largest in the world. They've recorded more than 15,000 new coronavirus infections every day for a week. But the government's repeatedly dismissed the idea of a new lockdown or shutting down businesses. An outlier in the response to the pandemic, at least for now. Nadeem Barber, Al Jazeera.
And now for the weather. Present weather is fair. A moderate breeze of 16 miles per hour is blowing from the east. Current temperature is 28 degrees Celsius or 82 degrees Fahrenheit. Seas are reaching 5 to 7 feet. Small craft operators should continue to exercise caution. Expect partly cloudy skies with a 70% or high chance of showers, with a 40% or moderate chance of thunderstorms later today, and partly cloudy conditions with a 70% or high chance of showers tonight. Sunset today will be at 5:42 p.m. and the sun is expected to rise tomorrow at 6:07 a.m. And that brings us to the end of the ZIZ Midday Newscast. Join us this evening for these stories and more in detail. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm your presenter, Shaira Flanders. Have a good one.